Okay, here's a rig that falls into the 5 zone. Okay, you can see the dry rot on the hoses. This one's probably from about 59 or 60, thereabouts. It's got the yellow hoses. And I got 2 of these rigs, I call them the twins. I haven't fixed them up yet either. It's missing about, 10% of its chrome in various spots. It's got some verdigris on the interior cans, and of course massive dry rot. This one's actually in fairly good shape. It doesn't have any noticeable dents or dings in it. There's a couple little dents that can be taken out, small ones. And of course you've got label damage to a degree, and verdigris, insipid verdigris underneath there, and the lost the rubber. Now I can't see in there, but you can see the verdigris on the inside of the can. Okay, and as a number 5, you have a lot of deterioration of all the rubber parts. So that's a fairly good approximation of number 5. This one doesn't have any cracks in it, but that's something you got to look for, cracks and dents. It's got a little bit of tiny bits of deformation on it, but generally I'd call that a fairly competent example of a number 5. As a note, number 4 should read used very poor condition. Number 5 is poor condition, number 4 is very poor condition. That's just a typo on the reg guide. Number 4 reg is going to be something like this. This is the other twin. Here's a number 4. Okay, no cracks. Okay, great. No real dents, but of course the hoses are completely rubbed off, and you can see a lot of verdigris on the inside. Let's see if I can get a good picture in there on the internals. Some serious damage, probably about 20% on the label. This rig, too easy to rebuild. Wouldn't be too much of a problem to getting the verdigris cleaned up and get it all cleaned up. If you wanted, of course, you could put a new label on it, but its hoses are completely rotted out. Of course, it's very similar condition to that number 5. Now here's what I'd call a number 3 reg, and you can see a lot of damage to the chrome, probably more than 20%. All the rubber components are gone. It's got a few slight dents on it. You've got probably about 40% of the label has lost its paint. Still a recoverable regulator. This one has got a lot of interior verdigris on the internals, as well as when I opened up the nozzle there, but still fully recoverable with a little bit of TLC, and if you want to spend the bucks on it, you can get it re-chromed and do a great job. This one's probably from the early 60s as well, I would say, because it does have a vestige of its original yellow hose. There was only a couple, I want to say 2, 3, maybe 4 years. I have to look it up on the VDH color scheme reg. What color are my hoses? It's on the Vintage Double Hose website. They've got that information there on what the hoses were. Approximating the serial numbers on this one. This is 20060, and I would say it was probably early 60s reg, maybe late 59, but it's got the yellow hoses, or what's left of it. But the recoverable, yeah. Now granted, see all that verdigris and all that chrome rot on there. Yeah, you can get that re-chromed, redone. You can clean them up, and they clean up just fine. But that's a number 3. Here's another number 3 here. Okay, now this one's losing nice little chunks of chrome off of it. This would be a late 50s model Aquamaster. It would have probably had black hoses, and if you notice, it does not have the hookah port. We're probably about a 58 maybe. I'd have to look. Then again, that information is available It still has its original copper center filtered in there. And as we look around, there is some verdigris on the inside. You might not be able to see it very well, but there's some verdigris on the internals, and you got some verdigris in and around there. No cracks though, however, but of course all of its hoses are completely missing, and of course the crown sticker is faded and nasty, and it's probably lost it's got little chunks taken out of its label. But that's number 3, and the reason I'm saying it's number 3 is look at that main body right there. It's a lot of chrome loss there. Probably lost about at least 20% of its chrome once it's cleaned up, and of course you've got chrome loss up front here. But yeah, number 3s are still salvageable. Now, what's a number 2? Number 2 is way down the line. Okay, relic condition. Okay, and yes, for instance, this would be in my book like a number 2. Hey, even though the parts are great, the regulator is totally incomplete. It's an old Decor single stage regulator, and although yes, you could, if you want to put the effort in, it's still got some decent chrome. It's so disjointed, it's missing screws, parts, pieces, no diaphragm, no hoses, and it's got some verdigris too on the inside, and some actual copper oxides there on the inside of the inhalation horn. When you start talking about a number 1, that's a number 2. Basically, okay, a relic. And a relic can be something that's complete but absolutely non-functional, really ugly. That could be considered a number 1 as well, but there's actually usable, all of this stuff can be reutilized if you wanted to put the effort in. A number 1, which is a parts bin reg, that's where you might have just half the regulator, or maybe a couple pieces of it. That basically you might get a pile of parts that are rusted, corroded, damaged, and the possibility of putting that regulator back together in operational condition is next to nothing. And of course, you wouldn't want to use it as a wall hanger because it doesn't have any kind of real aesthetic appeal. I don't really have a true number 1 hanging around, so just go ahead, look in this box here and just call that the parts regulator box, because notice there's a lot of Decor stuff too. When you start talking about this, and like I said, we can split hairs and all that. And the regulators I brought up, yeah, points could be made that they're actually not a 5. They could be a 6, depending on the amount of original equipment and the condition overall of various areas of the reg. But when you get down to like 4, 3, and 2, okay, it gets really ridiculous. Now on the bottom of the guide I'm going to just say it right now. Guide serves only as a general guideline for regulators and does not take into account various subtle differences on any given regulator. For instance, the regulator itself can be an 8, but hoses can be a 4 or below. Common sense needs to be applied when grading regulators. Another example, a regulator may evince a 9 on the guide scale aesthetically. In other words, it looks great, sort of like this puppy, which is, I would sit there and say this is a solid 8, although it's not functional. It looks great wall hanger. It's a solid 8. Maybe a 7. If it was functional, I would say it'd be an 8.5, except for those hoses and stuff, which are pretty dangerous. Okay, or it might evince a 9 on the guide scale, but with regards to function, the regulator may be only a 6 or 7. 7 is really like semi-functional. In other words, it's a crappy breather and needs to be adjusted. 6 means it doesn't function at all as a regulator in a life support system. Okay, as with anything in life, buyer beware. Hopefully this guide and the little videos I've shown you will help you get a better eye on the items that people are raping you for over on eBay right now. I don't put a pricing guide in because there are too many variables, depending on fluctuations in the market as well as the rarity of the rigs. For instance, that dragger that I showed you, that dragger is fairly, it's around, the dragger's around, but something that looks like this in this kind of shape, you know, they might charge you an arm and a leg for it, but it doesn't work. I mean, the diaphragm is going on it. So yeah, it's a pretty wall hanger, but it's actually a 7.5 because it doesn't function. So buyer beware. You shouldn't be paying big bucks for something like this dragger. You shouldn't be paying big bucks for a number 4 or number 5 regulator, because, or even a number 6, because you're going to have, if you're in a rebuilding area and you want to actually dive it, you got to put some extra bucks in there. And you're looking at anywhere from $150 to maybe up to $250 to get a reg up to snuff and to look all nice and beautiful again. So, you know, when they're charging you, oh, it's a rare regulator, it works, but I'm not a diver, I don't really know anything, but I put it on an air tank and it works. That's sort of a strange statement coming from somebody who says it works, but they're not a diver, or they don't know anything, but they're saying it works because they hooked it up to a tank. Those are sort of what I call bullshit telltales. The person doesn't know a damn thing about it, and what they're doing is they're gauging their prices from what they're seeing on the internet for full-blown level 9 and 8.8 regulators that are already rebuilt, such as the Argonaut, Kraken, and fully rebuilt and refurbished vintage regulators. So be careful when you're out there, and if they want $200 for this reg, depending on the mark, they're wrong. Okay, you're looking at least to get this up to speed, okay, without doing any cosmetic stuff and putting new chrome, that's even more bucks. But if you just wanted to get up to speed, drop a new high pressure seat in it, and drop a new hoses, new mouthpiece, new main second stage diaphragm, new second stage diaphragm, all the goodies that go into this stuff, you're going to be looking at about, you know, up to about $150 to $200 outlay, depending on what you need to do with it. So if they want $200 for it, and you're going to drop 200 more bucks on it, and then you know, or maybe 250, or if you re-chrome it, maybe 300 more bucks, $500 regulator. You won't be able to sell that back on the internet for $500, guys. I'm telling you, because people are just looking for the lowest bottom line, and they'll just automatically say, no, I ain't spend no 500 bucks for it. I don't care if it breathes Tiffany cufflinks. When you start getting up to that level, you're better off just buying, if you want to get into the double hose, buying a new Argonaut Kraken, or talk to people on the Vintage Double Hose website. There is an area where the guys will sell refurbished regulators. They've already dove them, they've already proven them, and you're not going to be paying 500 bucks to get this thing up to snuff. So buyer beware. Now, just a little selfie here. I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, I got rid of the beard and stuff. It's been about 1.5 years since the last video, and I'm sorry it took so long, but we're going to sit there and drive on and keep on rebuilding regulators as best we can, and hopefully this guide and this little bit of video has been a help to you. So you have a good day now.